Hello, in this video you'll learn how to build a strong composition using just a few simple shapes and a clear sense of direction. The tall buildings frame the street and naturally pull the eye into the distance, a structure you'll often see in Edward Seago's Paris backstreet paintings. You'll also learn how to use a really limited subdued palette to create atmosphere without overcomplicating things. Now we're talking about soft greys, muted browns, and there's just enough variation to suggest light and depth. Keeping the colours restrained actually strengthens the composition because nothing distracts from the flow of the scene. I'll show you how these two ideas, that's a clean, confident composition and a simple palette, work together to create a mood that feels very Seago inspired but still loose and easy to follow. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to wet the paper all over, and by doing that I use a small mister spray, and then I'll mix up quite a large puddle of Payne's Grey. That's just Payne's Grey watercolour paint and lots of water, and keep it very watery because I want to go over all of this and let it dry, and when I start painting it will look virtually white. Now with this painting you'll see that I like to keep my commentary really simple, just the things that you actually need to learn from, because this style of painting doesn't really rely on tricks or complicated techniques. It's very much that classic English watercolour approach. There's a few washes laid over each other, clear shapes, and you let the paint do what it wants to do. The actual painting itself, I was inspired by Edward Seago's beautiful Paris backstreet paintings. He had a wonderful way of simplifying a scene, and that's exactly what I've done here. There's tall buildings framing the street and guiding your eye right in the distance. It's a structure that works every time. I'm also going to keep the palette quite subdued, with soft greys, muted browns, nothing too loud, because it's a simple palette and it gives so much atmosphere. It actually strengthens the composition because nothing distracts from the flow of the scene. And in this video you'll learn how to build that strong composition with just a few shapes, how to use a limited palette to create the mood, and how to layer your washes in a controlled way. Then we'll add a few selected details and finally the people in the shadows that bring the whole street to life. First of all, I'm starting with the distant houses. They're nothing more than a shape with watery Payne's Grey. With watercolour paint it dries much lighter, as this will, and I'm just dabbing it with a tissue just to take off some colour, just to disperse that flat wash a bit. And I'm using raw umber, which is a colour I'll be using quite a bit of in this particular painting. Very much a brown, a goldy brown, light red, also burnt sienna. You can see with my large palette, mix up the paints, leave a large puddle of paint there should I want it for future use, or should I want to add other colours to it. Now I'm using a medium round, size 12. I've let that dry, the background, because I want a nice crisp edge. I'm going to start putting in the buildings. Should you want the outline drawing of this painting and others that I've done, you'll find it on my Patreon page, where if you become a member you can get them for free, or you can buy a pack. They're very worthwhile having, as it does save you the trouble of drawing it yourself. You can use the light boxes or tracing paper. And also there's the issue of perspective with this particular painting that I've to deal with and drawn correctly. I have the board slightly tilted, putting the wash on from the top and bringing it down. I'm going to be varying the tones in these buildings. You'll see I'll use different techniques to break the colours up by using slightly different tones. To also do things like putting the tissue on to just to break it up just a little bit, quite simply. Then you don't have to worry too much when you're putting the wash on about putting some areas thinner than others. Once again, raw umber. Just using it thicker mix. Just using a thicker mix can change the colour enough. Going up to the other side there because I want to let that first wash dry over there. So I want those lines to be crisp where the buildings meet each other. So I've come over the other side there using a much stronger mix. This will all dry out much lighter. I love this type of painting. Um, it's quite an old style of painting actually, but I think even today it holds strong. There's a lot of paintings that are done now, very brash and lots of red, lots of abstract lines and things like that. They're fine in their own right, but there's still a place for this style of painting. Now you'll see what I'm doing as I'm coming down. I'm still using a size 12 round, but I'm leaving little chinks of white light. And you can see what's happened with the Payne's Grey initial wash. It's dried out very light, and now the colours are going on. It just means you're not working with a white paper background, and you've got to go over afterwards. On the bottom of these buildings, there's going to be some canopies, which I'm leaving white. I'm only going to be using a handful of colours with this, really, all quite muted colours, greys, browns, and nothing's too strong. At this stage, I'm only thinking about atmosphere and these big shapes. I want that kind of gentle Paris mist to sit in straight away. Nice crisp lines where the buildings meet. Just break up the composition a bit. A bit more burnt sienna in this one, so it's a bit lighter, a bit warmer, coming to the forefront of the painting. Now I'm mixing Chinese white halfway through this wall, bringing the wash down with that. So I'm just varying it. Once again, being mindful of leaving these white areas which are going to be part of windows. I'm not going to paint every window, just a few, just to give the impression of windows on the buildings. All looks very abstract initially, but it's very important. Also important to remember where items like the canopies are, because they're going to be left untouched. And also they're very much a part of the painting that draws the eye and keeps the eye in that painting. There's going to be a few people in here that weren't in my original image that so This isn't a copy of a Seago painting. This is my own interpretation of it. And once again, a slight variation going all the way down with this wash from the top. The paper I use is a 140 pounds Saunders Waterford Rough, which is a cotton based paper that I like to use. I get all of my materials from Jackson's Art. If you use the link in the description or on my website, it will just help the channel. Still left a few glimmers of white on the left hand side there where there's going to be windows. This is all part of the initial planning for the painting before I even start of what I'm gonna do in what area and what I'm going to leave. And then if you do use these outline drawings, it gives you an idea of what to leave as you go. And because this is painted in kind of sections, you don't have to paint that fast, and you can bring the colour down slowly and look as you go. Very dark wash here. Put neutral tint in with the mixture. This is the lower part of the nearest building, leaving the more muted tones to the distance and the warmer colours to the foreground, giving the impression that they're nearer. And the same on the right hand side as well. It's bringing that in a slightly warmer tone of the colour. With some areas here, I'm just going to be leaving white marks, putting in windows. It's all part of the loose atmospheric look to a painting. As long as you do the painting all over pretty much the same way, it will look fine at the end. It all looks a bit bitty as you're going on, but just have confidence that when you finish, to the observer, it will look right. Bringing the colour down, not playing too much with the wash. Very much one touch, moving down, but still looking out for the areas where there's things like windows, canopies. It will look quite dull until the next washes go on and it's broken up with pedestrians and shadows from the buildings and things. But the sky needs to be left plain. All the atmospheres in the building and the streets. Not going to be using too many brushes in this particular painting. I can get by with size 12 for most of it. What I do with the brush when I switch colours is I've got a couple of pots of paint, and I just pop the brush in the clean pot of water and run it out, roll it out on a flat sponge. I find that it quickly leaves the brush ready for the next colour. The only time you can't really do that is if you go too dark with your colours. It's too difficult to get it out. It's best just to use another brush, either the same size or slightly smaller if you're going smaller. But I do try to keep going with a larger brush. Keeps it looser. Kind of just keep going quicker. I like to paint quite quickly. I only stop to dry things off, and you don't see that part because I edit that out. You can see how it's taking shape now. I do individual washes for all the different buildings. I know with some of the techniques I've seen now, you just put a big wash over everything and let everything kind of mingle. But I like this style. Now what I'm doing here is I'm putting the paint on and then using a brush with just a little bit of water on just to merge the edges. I'll probably be going over this again. I don't want everything just to be flat washes, but like blocks of colour. I want things to vary. Once again, be very mindful of those white areas. They're very much a part of the finished painting. I mean, when you look at the finished painting, it's not much off of a monochrome painting, which can be quite effective. It's quite a nice change from some of these brash, colourful paintings that you see. Although I did do one quite recently with bringing on the colour. So there's no right or wrong. Doing the same thing here, putting in some darker shades on the same wall. Still minding that canopy down the bottom there. Want that to be a feature. As each wash goes on, it's becoming more and more of a feature. And with this large palette, I can go back to it, put some water in the brush and make it more watery, or dip in again to the well and add more paint. Really means it's flexible. And then I really want to make a feature of this canopy over there, so I've dipped into neutral tint. Just let that wet into wet blend. And again, using the tissue just to take some of the colour out. Burnt sienna. You can see I'm pretty much dipping into the same colours all the time, just varying strengths. Raw umber, just dipped into French ultramarine. I use Winsor & Newton paints, but I've started to use more Jackson's artist quality paints. They're very reasonably priced. They're very good quality. There is a link to Jackson's materials in the description and on my website, and if you use that link, it will help my site, help my channel. Now with this thicker mixture, I'm doing the rooftops. They'd be very dark against this grey, misty sky. Keeping those lines nice and sharp. When you're doing architecture, you do have to keep certain elements of it correct, otherwise it stands out to the eye. You can't just uh, do things like lines of windows at different levels and that when they shouldn't be. It will just cry out as wrong, even on very impressionistic, rough things. Some areas you can get away with it, but others, it's got to be right. Your lines of windows have got to be correct. I've not really changed brushes here. I'm still using a size 12 round brush that I started with. No real need to really. I'm just using these browns and greys, not too far from each other colour wise. Bringing it down the wash from the top to the bottom, just letting it run slightly. It's not on too drastic a angle, so they'll only run down very slightly. And then varying the ground floor of this block of apartments, just to emphasise this canopy there, the white looking canopy. That's another feature, drawing the eye. Very important to keep the perspective right. Each painting as well. I mean, as I go here, it's I think there's touches of Lowry style of colours. He was the same era as Edward Seago. I still think these style of paintings are very attractive. If you do like them, just let me know. I can always do more on this channel or in my Patreon channel. If you like this style of painting um, and you'd like to see some videos of mine without the advertisements, come over to my Patreon channel. Where I do exclusive demos. There's also a tier that I'll give you critiques on your paintings if you'd like someone to actually give you some feedback on what you're doing, because I know it's quite difficult when you're painting at home and you can't always get out uh, to find out how you're doing. I mean, another way is to join an art club or community locally, but not everyone can do that, and not everyone's got the time. They're busy working. So for me to offer that service, I think it could maybe help a few people to progress with their work. You can see it's getting really dark now. Neutral tint, raw umber, dipping in that corner, virtually not moving away. These colours are getting quite deep now. Putting it on quite fast, but still enough control there to go around these white areas, which are the impressions of windows on these buildings that are closest. Always bringing it down, keeping that edge. Bring these washes down, do the edge first and then the rest. It does take a while to dry on this cotton based papers, but it's still best to keep working like this. Always best if you can to use the better quality papers. I made the mistake when I was learning to paint of using cheap paper, and just couldn't work out why I couldn't paint like I saw my heroes painting. I realised that they were all using good quality paper. I know it means mucking up. Good quality paper quite often, throwing stuff away, but it's worth it in the long run if you can afford it, and it will help your art journey. There's many other hobbies that are far more expensive than a few sheets of watercolour paper. I've dropped in some darks into these wall areas there to vary it. It would look too bland if you just gave it a wash of the same colour. I've broken up the lower parts of these buildings with a band of dark, but keeping this entrance, or what looks like the impression of an entrance to a shop, or whatever it is, whatever that building is on the right hand side there. And once again, going around the canopy on the left there as well. See how they're kind of all springing to life now. Just doing these large expanses before I do any of the finer work, windows, pedestrians, things like that. I've got some aerials and flag poles as well that will be going in. Very much a case of putting the wash on, letting it dry, or drying it off, then putting the next wash on. But trying not to put too many washes on. People have commented that my watercolours sometimes give the appearance of an oil painting, which I don't know is good or bad really. I think that I certainly like contrast, light against dark, dark against light. It's what makes a painting. Decided to darken this building that's closest on the left there quite a bit. Same mixture, varying amounts of raw umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna, light red, neutral tint. Just very much sticking to that corner of my palette. Only using a small amount of water with this particular wash. I want to get the impression of some Georgian windows here. Yeah, another feature of this painting, leading you into the street. It's going to be the only clear image of windows in this entire painting. dark on the lower part. It's got more neutral tint in it than anything else. The neutral tint that I use is from Jackson's, as is the raw umber, burnt sienna. I do like Winsor & Newton's light red. I can't find a replacement for that. I like their particular shade. Great for roofs, cottages. Looks a bit dark this, but it will dry lighter. A little bit there with some of my tissue. Best to use tissue and not kitchen rolls. A lot of these kitchen rolls now have got a very nice pattern put in them, and if you just dab with that, sometimes you'll end up with the circle or something like that from the kitchen roll, which will look a bit odd. Just use straightforward tissue paper, Kleenexes. Everything that I'll be using for this painting, the materials, uh, colours, will be in the description below this. This will be details of how to connect with my Patreon site. Paint and water. Putting paint on, then putting some water. This is a size 9, slightly smaller round brush, but it's all round brushes. The only flat brush that I used was the large flat brush that I used for the initial first wash, which is one that I've had for many years, and it's just great for covering big areas quite fast and evenly, more so than a big mop really. A mop brush being like a round brush. Paint and water, bring it down, keeping those whites. I'll keep those. I did have an idea of roughly where I wanted the colours to go before I started this painting. Always do a bit of prep work before I let myself loose on the actual painting side of things. Small sketches and colour swatches and things, so that when I start to paint I don't really have to think too much about that kind of thing and just get on with the painting. And with these paintings I do for YouTube, I have to be mindful that it's going to be maximum an hour. I don't think anyone wants to watch painting for any longer than that really. But mine do give you a full description from start to finish with the painting. Don't do the drawing because that just adds to the time, and that's easier for you to get the drawings from my Patreon site. Getting a bit darker now. The dark colour in the mixture, but still using very much the same pool there. Be very difficult to do with a palette with the small wells in. You can use a a tray, ceramic tray, or a plate or something to do the same thing. If you just want to use your regular palette and do this kind of painting. The size of the painting, the paper that I'm using for this painting is a quarter imperial, which is about A3 size. And then there's a doorway of this building far right, before it merges into the distance there. Looking at this shutter on the, or not shutter, the canopy on the right hand side there, thinking I'm going to do something to add to that doorway there, make it more interesting. Blending in these colours, thick colour, thick paint, and then dipping into a little bit of water, just merging it so there's no hard edges. Just gives the appearance of a weathered facade to the building. Just looking at these windows, and used a size 9 there, but just a bit too large, so got rid of that with a tissue. The brush I've got now is called a rigger, which is quite a fine brush, size 2 rigger. Very good for doing these things like what I'm doing now: flagpole, aerials, windows, very fine lines. I'll be doing quite a bit now with this brush. I do like to use these. It's normally a sign that the painting is well on the way when the rigger comes out, as I tend to use it near the end. I've got two brushes in my hand. I've got the size 9 and the rigger brush, and on some areas I'm alternating between the two. I just want a little bit of kind of a shadow colour there, which is very much the same colour as everything else. The dark raw umber, just a bit on that corner there, and the fine work, the windows. Just making an effort to not paint the same looking window all the way down, just varying a bit. Makes it more interesting. It's always quite difficult to know to do the variety of windows sometimes when you're doing these buildings. As I say, I haven't painted every single window. That would make it quite dull, but just enough that when you look down the street when it's completed, it just all knits together as what it is: a series of buildings. And that's part of the attraction of the impressionistic painting, is that it just gives you a chance to, when you're looking, to have to use your imagination rather than anything that's photographic, where everything's got to be as it is in real life. I think this just adds to Adds to the mystery really of watercolour, beauty, and that's why I've been so attracted to this impressionistic style of watercolour painting. The viewer has to use their imagination to knit things together. And sometimes when you do your paintings, they don't look quite right when you're finished. You're a bit unsure. But when it's like that, and you think you've done a good painting, just leave it for a few days or even weeks. Sometimes I've had it with painters and come back and look at it with fresh eyes, as if you're looking at it with somebody else's painting. Sometimes you'll think, oh, hang on a minute, that's not actually too bad. Doing these chimney pots and things from the top of the buildings, flagpoles, I suppose. If it's old Paris, it wouldn't be aerials, but they are nice verticals, as are the chimneys. Break up the skyline nicely, dark against light, and some more of these windows. I've left a few white chinks here and there. Really only making a fuss of these forward facing windows, not at the side on. You can see as I go, it's all kind of coming together now. You notice that when I put the brushes into the paint on the palette, I roll the brush into it to get maximum paint on the bristles, and it's especially important when you're using the rigger. Roll it in and get as much paint as you can on that tip, because you don't want it running out halfway through a line if you can help it. And things like varying the intensity of colours for things like these windows here. uh, They're quite vague, really, quite watery paint. Um, it comes down to experience, really. Or you can always test a bit on a piece of paper, preferably watercolour paper, to see what the consistency is before you put it onto the actual painting if you're not sure or you're not used to colour mixing. Just a few flicks, these windows, but they're still very much in the perspective of the buildings. As you can see, these lines of perspective as the building disappears in the distance. Not making too much of this close building on the right hand side. Not putting all the windows on that one. Leaving that one loose. Your mind will register that it's windows on a building. And it's this doorway now that about just using a bit of brown Chinese white. darken that up to make more of a feature of the canopy. And you can see it's coming up like it was white when in actual fact it's Payne's grey. The whiteness has just been taken off. And now the pedestrians, very slowly and carefully with these. Something to keep in mind when you're doing paintings where you've got pedestrians in the distance and in the foreground is that the heads will be the same height unless it's going up or downhill. Just a few smudges of paint in the distance there using neutral tint. This is where I've used the drawings that I do, the outline drawings. It just make it easier. You haven't got to worry about where things are. A few people over there on the right hand side. Slowly and purposefully moving along with this rigger brush. Not rushing this one. Keeping an eye on things like heads, making sure the heads are not too big. I've got football heads, pumpkin heads. They're the right size for going through the shop doorways. Just a few people here and there, not too many. Just enough so the street's not empty. And it gives you a sense of proportion as well, the building sizes. Quite a slow process this. I'll try and keep it interesting as we go. Here's the main man, central character. Giving him a hat, kind of a bit of a cape, I think you call it. Shoulders. Walking into this street in old Paris. Give the appearance of walking a bit as well. Slightly bent legs. Adds to the story. You think, where's he going? Where's he come from? Who's he meeting? Is he wearing a hat? Nice to have a bit of interest, a bit of mystery in a painting. A lot of work with this rigger brush, but I knew it was going to take a while. Putting in some of these shadows. That's another thing with the perspective side of things. Look at the shadows on the character in the middle. Those on the left hand side, like the hands on a clock would go. Now I'm using a very watery mix of grey. This is going to be the shadow colour, mixed up enough to go in one wash, using a size 12, working from right to left. And you see that this, as soon as the shadow goes in, it helps anchor everything and it guides your eye along the street. And that connects the right hand side of the painting with the left. And you can see it's very much a traditional English watercolour painting with a nod to Edward Seago's Paris scenes. Very famous artist, always had sellout sales on his I think he used to have yearly exhibitions at London galleries. People would queue up outside. He's coming to the end of the painting now, putting in these final shadows. Just looking around, making sure everything appears to be correct shadow wise. Not too much to do now. Putting my signature on the bottom right. Bit premature there. Merged in with the shadow colour. Just dried that off a bit and going over again. No harm done. Yeah, I think it looks quite a successful painting. Just sort this chap's cloak out there. Who is this mystery man? What does he want? Have to take your time with figures when they're close up. And that's it. That's the whole process. You've seen how the first washes set the mood, how the second washes strengthen the shapes, and just how a handful of details and shadows complete the story. A limited palette keeps everything calm and unified, and the composition does the rest. Hope this gives you the confidence to try this English layered approach. It's simple, it's forgiving, and it creates a beautiful atmosphere. Thank you for watching. Hope you'll join me again. Hope you'll have a go yourself. And you'll find the outline drawing over on my Patreon site. Bye for now.